22 News Broadcast Center. This is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Kate Walsh. Each November 11th, we honor veterans on Veterans Day, but the whole month of November is Military Family Appreciation Month. So this week on 22 News in Focus, we're looking at the issues facing military families, active duty personnel, and veterans, and a few of the local support programs available to them. We have a large panel of guests today, so joining me down the line first is Tracy Taylor, president of the Western Massachusetts Gold Star Mothers, Lisa Petito, manager for the Airmen and Family Readiness Program at Barnes Air National Guard Base, Rob Barron, a member of the Board of Directors for the Pioneer Valley USO, Shanna King, director of the Airmen and Family Readiness Program at Westover Air Reserve Base, Mike Hagmeyer, executive vice president of Soldier On, and Jennifer Remillard, contractor and family assistant specialist for Massachusetts National Guard Family Program. One thing I've learned is the military has long titles for everyone's position. But thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it and all of your input. And first, I just want to go down the line and talk about what your organization is and what you plan to talk about today. So we'll start with you.
Unfortunately, the Gold Star Mothers are mothers who have lost a child in service. And so we try to, with the memory of our child, try to help and volunteer our time and collect money for other organizations as you have here. We just try to keep their memory alive.
As the Airmen and Family Readiness Program Manager at Barnes, I help airmen from the day they enlist right through the day they retire and beyond, and then taking care of their families for any needs that come up throughout their whole military careers.
The USO, we deal with active duty members and their families, helping them keep connected while they're deployed or while they're traveling abroad.
I'm basically Lisa's counterpart at Westover, so we do a lot of the same things. One of our big focuses is to help families during times of deployment and then times of transition, whether that be transitioning back from deployment or transitioning on to other things in the military or getting out of the military.
And at Soldier On, we work with homeless veterans through transitional housing and also permanent housing, employment readiness, and we work very closely with a lot of community members.
As a contractor for the Mass National Guard Family Program Office, we provide resources and referrals to military members, regardless of branch of service, their family members. We do an emphasis during the times of deployment to conduct outreach monthly to make sure the families stateside are doing okay so that the service member can focus on their mission. So we work with a lot of the local agencies, and we work in connection you know, with many of the organizations you have here on the panel today.
And many of you your programs are funded federally and with state money, but also I'm sure, especially with Gold Star Mothers, so private donations are
Correct.
The main source of
that
income.
is our main source, yes, is private.
And do you find that many people do?
No.
No,
I do not find it. It's a difficult subject for a lot of people to want to talk about, never mind donate to. So I'm hoping to get the word out more.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the beginning of the whole process. Actually, I want to start with some facts. There was a recent survey out, and it said that many older families, military families, were saying that they would suggest to younger people not to join the military because of everything that goes along with it. You know, obviously the fear of what could happen on a deployment and how it divides the family. Obviously you all work with military members, and back in the day it was a sense of pride to send one of your kids into the military. What would you say to that new survey about so many people not wanting their family members or younger people to join the military? Does anyone want to start?
I think when you join the military, you and your family are joining the military, and it is a special bond once you become a military family member. There is such a network, especially here in Massachusetts, to help take care of our service members and their families, that, I mean, it's a unique, loving group to join.
I'd like to add to that, in addition to being a contractor, I'm also a family member who's currently going through a deployment, and the resources that Massachusetts has to offer for families is amazing. And to be a part of this community is being embraced by local organizations, your peers, your counterparts, and with being affiliated with the National Guard here, our community is throughout the entire state, not just on a base. It's not active duty situation. So having these organizations, such as we're all involved with, are really important. And I think we're all very proud to be part of that community.
And how does it all, oh, does anyone else?
Oh, I was just going to say, besides being working for the military, my husband did 10 years active duty. And so that's a little different experience than what our Guard and reservists go through. Because I was always surrounded by a military community. We lived on base, so I had that extra support network. As a mother, I can understand why you would be like, oh, I don't want my child, because I think, oh, my 9-year-old son, is he going to want to join the military? Because we've been there, done that. My husband deployed 5 times, so I know what it feels like to be left. But at the same time, it's not a situation for everybody, but I think that everybody that does it goes in knowing, you know, what they're getting. And that, like everybody said, the support community is always outstanding, whether it be active duty or especially here in Massachusetts, it's outstanding.
And I will say this, with the veterans we talk to in our program, the older veterans who are Vietnam era veterans who are combat veterans, they actually would prefer that their family members not serve because of what they did see overseas, and they fear for them.
Would you say, though, that things have changed now versus obviously the Vietnam era, but when it comes to support for families, or has it deteriorated since back in the day with World War II and the Vietnam War?
I think a lot of the Vietnam era veterans have done a lot to change the environment. One of the things you'll see is people may not always agree with whatever mission the service members may be on, but they support the service member and their families as individuals, whether they support the missions or not, you know, or believe in them. So I think the Vietnam era veterans and even the Gulf War veterans have done a lot to change the environment.
Our volunteers are mostly made up of veterans, military retirees, so a lot of the stuff we do is based on experiences they had coming home or while they were deployed. So we use lessons learned from them to help improve, you know, today's care.
And obviously we're talking about families and active duty members and reservists, but also families who have lost someone serving. Would you say that there is support for you?
Absolutely. It has taken me a while to get through my depression to find it, but it is out there. And it seems to be every interview I do or phone call I reach out to, there happens to be somebody new. And it's just my community is growing, and I'm very thankful for that.
Would you be able to share a little bit about your son so we have a connection with him and carrying on with this hour, knowing, you know, how it really does affect families? We hear about war overseas, and sometimes people can't connect to it unless they are in the military or affected. So would you be able to share?
Well, going back to your question about not joining, I could have told him not to join, but he had it in his head this is what he was going to do. He wanted to do this since a very young age. All he wanted to do was protect. I could say no. He was old enough to go, and it was a dream of his to be there. As a teenager or a young adult, you think that you're invincible, and he wasn't, but he was doing exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to protect. He believed in our flag. He believed in our country. And he wanted his sister, that was 9 years younger, to be safe.
And when did he serve, if you don't mind?
He signed in 2006, and he was killed in 2007. We just passed the 10-year anniversary. But he wouldn't have had it any other way.
And it's incredible now that I'm sure you've been able to gain strength and be able to share his story with others through the organization, and you find the support.
Every time I possibly have the option to speak about him, I do, because it's all about him. It's not my sacrifice. He was the one that signed, and he was the one that wanted to be there.
We're going to talk about military families specifically and the challenges they face and how you all help them through the process and the years that they serve after the break. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about military family, active duty, and veteran support services for families because they face unique challenges. Even when we're not at war, they often deal with stresses like frequent moving or the absence of a spouse, child, or parent. Deployment to war creates additional issues for a family to handle and the constant worry of it all. So now that we're back and we're talking a little bit about each organization and how you represent members of the military, I first want to talk about the process of families starting in the military. If someone is engaged, for example, or they're dating someone, how is it different from them actually being married? I know there's strict rules in the military with that. So can someone start us off with talking about the restrictions that maybe you have if you're not married to your boyfriend or girlfriend?
A lot of, I don't know, power benefits comes with that ID card that you get once you get married. And so until there's actually an actual marriage, a marriage certificate, and you've registered that with the military system, it's very easy to get left out. I was with my husband prior to, he was in the military prior to us being married, and so the amount of information and kind of services that opened up to me once I had that nice little dependent ID card was phenomenal. He was active duty, so he was, you know, far away, but there's just, we try with, I think, the reserves and the Guard as well, we try to support all military families because we understand the military members usually in their community, so we try to be supportive of significant others, as well as family members, parents, grandparents, etc. But especially for our active duty folks, it's kind of like an all or nothing situation. You're either ID card carrying dependent or you're just kind of hanging out. And
you can't live on the base unless you're married.
That's correct.
What if you have children and you know you're a boyfriend or girlfriend to the active duty person?
The child is able to get an dependent ID card, so you're actually your newborn infant child could sponsor the parent on, the non-military parent. So they would be able to come onto the base. But as far as base housing, it's been a while since I've been affiliated with active duty, and I still would think they wouldn't be eligible to live in the base housing if it was on the installation.
And are there services available through your organizations maybe for people in that whole process, you know, not really knowing what it's like to all of a sudden be a spouse or a significant other of someone who just joined and is active?
One of the things that the National Guard program does is the RSP recruitment sustainment program, and we go in and provide a briefing to family members, to new recruits who just passed basic and AIT advanced training, and we go over all of the different things that the family members, including parents and dependents, are eligible for, including family readiness group meetings and group eligibility, so anyone from the community can also be a part of those programs, but letting them know about the benefits the dependent children are eligible for and the new spouses. We explain a lot about military terminology because a lot of times family members will feel as though the military member is speaking a different language, which it really is. Yeah. Our household is a lot of acronyms as well as work, so I think that's the biggest obstacle people try to overcome, but then they get to see and meet the command and the unit that their soldier is being brought onto during that RSP presentation and briefing afterwards. So it's like a graduation ceremony, and it's up to the soldier or service member to allow their family member to know about all the information, because the breakdown can sometimes happen when the communication from the soldier or service member to the family member about the different briefs that go on or organizations, meetings that happen at that point in time. But that's what the Guard program, you know, that does in our state.
Oh, interesting.
And over at Barnes, we're really fortunate that our recruiters are right down the hall from me. So typically when we get a new recruit signed in, they'll bring them right down, family in tow. So I get the opportunity to meet moms, dads, sisters, brothers, wives, and husbands. So they get that personal connection. And then when they're in student flight, we make sure that every drill I'm going in there and giving them education and making sure to get their loved ones information to be able to directly disseminate that information to them.
And you're nodding your head. As a mom, how was it for you with that whole process?
I actually, he didn't have me involved in it much, but I like and appreciate that because it just, when Kenny's situation, he just wanted to join. It was, let me hold that gun and let me go. You know, he didn't want to, here's the paperwork, and he was all for it. So I truly appreciate that and like to hear that everybody is involved.
And does the USO help out in that whole process, or is that later on?
We do. If we get new people that come to the base, or if we have transient people from other bases that are staying on base, we can help them out, like, you know, getting them situated, giving them help on where the best place to stay, or, you know, if they just need, you know, snack or food or a place to sit for a couple hours and watch TV while they're waiting for their flight, we accommodate them doing that.
And I did want to add too that the USO is not federally or state funded. It's
correct.
Private funds.
We are a 501c3, so everything we do is based off of donations.
But you've been around forever, so I'm sure you have a lot of donations from.
We do. We have a lot of supporters and big companies that do support us, and you know, a lot of it too is we have individuals in the military that also support us. So you know, we have people supporting themselves basically in the long run. So.
All right. Now back to the families. If also there's, I'm sure, a lot of people who are married to someone in a different branch of the military. So that must be kind of tricky when, you know, a Marine is stationed at X base and then someone in the Air Force is stationed at Y base. Is there some kind of connection there between the branches of the military where, you know, they can compromise and find places to live near each other, or do they not live near each other during that time?
Well, I think it's different for active duty versus Guard and Reserves. I can tell you, Shanna and I both have pilots that are married. One works over as one of our fighter pilots, and one is a C-130, C-5 pilot. And, you know, we connect and we share information, and the same thing with the Army side of the house. We have lots of dual military families, and it's just all about reaching out to our counterparts and making sure that the other side of the house knows what's going on, so we can provide the ultimate number of supports for them.
And lucky for those two pilots, Westover and Barnes are, you know, pretty close. But what about if one of them was at Westover and one was in California? Is there any way that the California person can transfer to Barnes, let's say, and be close, or is that difficult?
I think on the reserve side and the Guard side, it's a little, people have more flexibility in movement. When you enlist in the Guard or the Reserve, you're usually enlisting to the base you know you're going to be at. And so if you want to transfer to a base, it's, you know, based on open spots, but it makes it easier. On active duty, that's where it gets really difficult. Again, my husband was active duty Air Force, and he had folks that he knew that were in the Air Force, both married, and there was no guarantee that when they were up for assignment they were going to get to the same base. So it's a lot of times you have folks that, my husband was security forces, so every base needs cops, and every base needs medical. So you would see a lot of medical and cops together because it was easy for them to get to the same location. But there definitely is no, the military will not guarantee you're going to be with your loved one. They didn't issue you that spouse, so.
Right. Wow. And are there choices at least when it comes to where you want to be stationed? Can you narrow down a list at all when you're active duty?
It's called a dream sheet.
Okay.
And it really is, I mean, unless you just want a base that nobody else wants, you make sacrifices for those dreams. We got, out of 4 moves, we got our dream once, but it was because my husband volunteered to do a remote assignment in Korea for a year, so that we could get a good base. So, I mean, you make sacrifices for your dreams.
Oh, it's very interesting. Did you want to add something?
I was going to say I've experienced where one service member who may be in the Guard and Reserve and the other is an active duty station, so they'll move where the active duty service member lives, and then that person for drill weekends, if they're still stationed up here in Massachusetts, they'll fly up for their drill weekend and then they'll fly home. Sometimes they can SUTA, which is making up drill time during different times of the year, and they get approval from their unit level. And sometimes they'll come up and stay for like a month to make up that time, so they don't have to fly up continuously. So it makes it a little more flexible. But you know, Shanna is very correct with active duty and doesn't have as much flexibility as the Guard and Reserve.
Wow. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll talk about children and how that gets tricky, I'm sure, when it comes to all of these moves and sacrifices in the military. You're watching 22 News in Focus. watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the issues facing military families, active military personnel, and veterans. We haven't talked about children yet, though, and I was looking at some more facts on the Department of Defense website, and it says as of 2015, 5 million Americans were part of the military family, and children typically moved 6 to 9 times between kindergarten and high school when their parents were in the military. I'm sure you're all nodding, you know that's true. How does that affect a child, and how do your organizations help families with children in coping with all of the stresses that have to do with being a part of the military?
Well, military kids are very resilient. You know, kids, I think it's easier to move and transition because it's really easy to make new friends most of the time. With that said, each branch has youth departments that are meant just to help out our military kids. So you get to be part of a special club. You get to, know that your mom or dad or loved one is going off to serve our country, and it's something special to be proud with. Mm-hmm. So here in Massachusetts, we're very fortunate that we have a ton of youth organizations that reach out to make those transitions easier. And even at Barnes, we offer with the Boys and Girls Club of Westfield, where there's childcare for our military kids every drill weekend, free of cost. Oh. So they get to be with other military kids, because if you're in the Guard or Reserves, that's not necessarily what the parents do Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. So it's different when you have to say, hey, my mom or dad's going away for 2 weeks, or my mom or dad's going away for 6 months or a year. To be able to connect with those children who are in the same circumstance is great for them.
Absolutely. I'm guessing too, since a school would be near a base, would most bases also have schools filled with children whose parents are in the military, like they're kind of grouped together, or is it really maybe sometimes awkward for them to be the one kid who's only in first grade at this school and then moving across the country to second grade at that school?
Some of the larger active duty bases have their own schools, their Department of Defense schools, but areas like this, it's going to depend on where they live. So if the parents are living in Chicopee, then Chicopee schools will have, the kids spread out on wherever they live. But if you live outside of a base that doesn't have a school and everybody lives in that town, then the school is probably going to have a higher population of military children. Hmm.
And what about the resources available for children when they find out that their mom or dad is going to be deployed to, the Middle East for the next year or two? What's available for them, and what do you do?
One of the benefits that the Guard has is the Military Family Life Consultant, and it's a DoD program where they offer social worker services that can come out and meet with the kids. They also offer where our child and youth program coordinators for the Guard program here can go out and talk with the school system that the children are involved in, to just maybe not identify the child, but to let them know that there is a child or multiple children experiencing a deployment, and how the school can help, working with the school counselors. And the Military Family Life Consultants can also do the same things. And they also offer counseling for the family unit. So when, say, mom or dad deploys, the family at home can go through counseling, to work on that transition, because our military children are very resilient, but sometimes there's a hiccup in the road where the routine's disrupted, or maybe the soldier deployed doesn't have the Skyping or, technology capabilities to FaceTime or see, and that sometimes can really affect them. But having those programs, at each location and within the community can help, and letting the school systems know that the deployments are going on, and not letting them know who's deployed, but letting them know, hey, we have these services, so if they're needed, they're aware of that.
And what are some of the biggest concerns that kids express when their parents are deployed? They know, having grown up in a military family, what could happen, and I'm sure, and the duties that their parents have for our country, but specifically when their parent is deployed, what are their main concerns, and how do they react to it?
Well, their parents just not there.
Right.
So, and as much as you prepare for someone not to be there, they're still not there, and they could be gone for a year. And so, how much can you really prepare a child for somebody to be gone for a year? Mm. So we do have a program that we use at the USO. It's called United Through Reading, where the service member can read a book we record it, and then we will send the book and the recording to that child or whoever at whatever time the service member requests. So if they want it sent on the child's birthday or on a holiday, we'll send the book, the read it, and the recording, so that basically the service member is reading the book to their child.
That's wow. And how about communication with the parent and the child when the parent is away? You were mentioning Skype. Is technology helping make that easier?
Technology has come a long way, even in the past 11 years that my husband's gone on 3 overseas tours. The first time, the internet capability where he was stationed wasn't great, but the second location in Afghanistan was worse. We couldn't see each other, so the USO did telephone calls or offered a telephone station at the base that he was stationed at. So we at least got to have phone calls on a semi-weekly basis. Maybe multiple days depending on missions and schedules, because with the time difference. And now on this current deployment, we're able to Skype or Facebook Messenger when we're able to, depending on the internet connectivity at his location. But it has come a long ways. It's not months without letters or things along those lines. It's still getting that personal connection. And that makes a huge difference for families and for children, especially because, like, Rob indicated, you can do the reading program, but now, mom or dad can sit and watch you do homework because maybe you're setting up that time frame during the week, or you're setting aside that hour, even with the time difference, to do face-to-face time. And some children, I've seen family members say, the children will point to the phone and go, mama or dada, pointing to the phone because they think mom or dad is in the phone when they're so young. But it definitely helps.
And I'm guessing you're a mom as well?
Yes.
So as a mom, how is it having a spouse away?
It's relatively easy, this deployment, because our son is much older. He's 19. But the first 2 deployments, we made it fun. We did Build-A-Bear things where we did recordings and sent over surprises with teddy bears and sayings. But we definitely had a lot of support from the family program here, because my husband's with the Guard, and with the community, and we got to know a lot of local military families within our community who knew what you were going through, so they would just come over and help with yard work or offer to just, hey, want to meet up for coffee and talk, because less than 1% of the population serves in the military at this point, so it's hard to find people who are connected in some way. So the family readiness groups and other support systems really help.
What would you have as a suggestion, any of you guys have a suggestion to people watching who don't really have a direct connection to the military, and how they could help you in some way, or a family in some way who's going through a deployment?
I think one of the best things that you can do to help a family is just ask them what they need. We get a lot of calls to our office. How can we help? What can we do? And if you know a military family, somebody in your church, somebody at school, every military family is different. Everybody's going to have different needs, different wants. Maybe it's a stay-at-home mom and she's got 3 kids and it's getting winter. And she just needs to know for her peace of mind that somebody's going to come shovel her snow. And so I always just ask the question. And sometimes my husband was gone the entire year. My son was 1. He left right before he turned 1 and came back right before he turned 2. And you hate to ask for help. But I was in a mom's group, luckily, with a couple other military moms. I wasn't military affiliated, and they kind of always knew. They're like, you're going to drop off your son next week, and I'm going to watch him for you for an hour. And I'm like, oh, I don't need it. They're like, no, even if you just go home and take a nap, you need it. So it's just to kind of, if you see a need, or just ask. And if they tell you no, they're fine. I mean, they probably really are fine, but that doesn't mean that, a casserole at their door one day isn't going to, be unwelcome.
Right. Interesting. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll talk about some other aspects of the military and the support groups there for them. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about military families, veterans, and active duty personnel, and we were talking about the families, but I do want to talk about veterans as well. They're we've seen billboards right now and ads on TV saying how the battle really just kind of starts when people come home from serving and becoming a veteran. So can you talk about how Soldier On helps those people? And you know, suicide rates are pretty high among veterans, so how you help prevent that with getting people the resources they need?
Sure. So we focus on doing a lot of outreach in the community. We work with, you know, we're lucky in the state of Massachusetts. We have veteran service officers in every community. And we're all pretty connected. All of our nonprofit agencies, veteran service officers in the state of Massachusetts, making sure that veterans receive all the services that they deserve. And at Soldier On, we are in the community providing outreach in Western Mass, but we're not just Massachusetts, we're in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Mississippi. But we provide transitional housing for men and for female veterans in Northampton and Pittsfield, but we also are trying to transition out of that transitional housing model and that homeless shelter model into a more permanent housing model. And we currently have 177 units of permanent housing that we've built here in Western Massachusetts because we feel that the transitional housing model is just a revolving door for veterans to go in and out of. And we've seen a lot of veterans go through that and keep coming back, and there's no real permanent solution because once they go out into the community and are by themselves and are isolated and are lonely, their demons start to come back, and that's when they come back to us. So really trying to now connect them when they do leave us to the community providers that are out there. And when we talk about suicide, we try and connect all of our veterans that leave us or that live with us with a mental health provider, whether it's through the VA or whether it's a community-based program.
And I know, yeah, would you like to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, in addition to that, all of our bases, we have directors of psychological health who are at our bases full-time to be able to provide services. We have Military One Source, which offers counseling. There's Military Family Life Consultants. And then you always have your chaplains to speak to also. So thankfully, there's lots of avenues, plus the community-based resources. There's the VA and the vet centers. So thankfully, if you're not comfortable going with one avenue, there's a different avenue that you can turn to.
But when people do come back, it's probably difficult for them to think about all of this. So are there people reaching out to them saying, hey, we don't want you to go down the wrong path. Come to us, we'll help you?
With the Guard with the National Guard, and even active duty, they offer a yellow ribbon program that's congressionally mandated for service members and their families. Well, mandated for the service members to attend, and you know they highly suggest the family members attend. And it's usually held around 60 to 90 days post deployment for these families. So at these events, there's various community vendors, you know, providers that go there, and they offer different briefings to the family members and to the service members about the resources that are available. So it's consistently done. And then if the service member continues to stay in the military, there's different PHAs. I forget what thank you. I forget the acronym sometimes. I'm so used to talking.
There are a lot of them.
But those are conducted annually by each unit, and they have to go through different assessments. Now it's up to the service member to share the information that they're experiencing, and sometimes they, you know, may feel that their career may be in jeopardy if they share certain things, or sometimes they'll share it with the, you know, if they're close with someone in the unit, or they'll share it with a chaplain, as Lisa suggested. And other times, you know, they may come into our offices and ask us about, hey, I don't want to talk about this, you know, or hey, you know, do you have any information on a counseling resource, where they won't go into detail, but we'll give them the information. And we usually follow up just to make sure, hey, did you ever, you know, get in touch with so-and-so, just to check in with them, or, you know, and a lot of times our offices throughout, whether it's at the base or in the armories, are really a focal point for community gathering. They'll pop in, we offer candy or different things, you know, in chat. So you try to develop a personal relationship, whether it's drill weekend or, you know, just regular office hours, that they'll stop by and talk to you. And then organizations like Mike, you know, are within the community for those who've separated. So there are a lot of resources available. It's just, you know, the matter of sometimes, you know, the service member utilizing them.
Mike, what would you say is the biggest challenge people face nowadays coming out of the military and becoming veterans?
Well, I think with the veterans that we see, I think it's a connection to the community, a loss of connection to the community. A lot when they discharge go back to the community that they thought they knew and end up at a VA hospital sometimes and end up transitioning to us. So I think sometimes it's just a loss of a connection to a community.
How about you just retired, would you say? Or
Yes.
So for you, how was it leaving and the resources available for you? Do you wish there were more?
Well, fortunately for me, when I retired from the area that I'm from. So I knew about all the resources in this area.
And your role at USO
And
as well?
My role at USO, I had people I could reach out to that I knew, people on this panel. So it wasn't that difficult for me, but I mean, I can see where people coming back to Massachusetts after being in Alaska for 6 years, things have changed and they don't know who to reach out to. So, I mean, hopefully they're watching this and seeing that, hey, there's people here, these are the people we need to reach out to.
And their experiences as well. I know we hear time and time again, there's a million movies about it. People go, they serve, they saw things no one should have to see, and then come home and they just can't talk to anyone about it or relate to anyone anymore. So how do they get out of that, and how does that affect the family, and what resources are there for the family?
Well, I mean, pretty much for any of the counseling resources, if a service member is using the resource, 9 times out of 10 the family member can use that same resource. So that's really helpful. I know for the Air Force and for the Army, before a service member retires, they have to go through a TAP program. And with TAP, we try to identify their needs going back into the civilian world, making sure that they have adequate ways to support themselves now that they're losing sometimes that paycheck, making sure that their housing's all set, and if it's not, we make sure they have a warm handoff to a community group that can help them. And then just really, I mean, I know Facebook and social media has been wonderful where that's where we identify a lot of issues. You'll see something pop up in someone's personal feed and one of us will pick up the phone call and be like, hey, is so-and-so okay? And that's how we connect to make sure that we're keeping an eye on our veterans and our military members. And then there's other organizations, the American Legions and the Veteran of Foreign War groups and the Vet Center. They still have hiking groups and painting therapy times to bring members back together to be able to be with someone who shared those common experiences with them.
And sometimes we'll get a concerned family member who will reach out to find resources because they see something or are just concerned. You know, and we get those phone calls and we try to let people know what's the norm and what's not the norm after a duration of time. But the yellow ribbon briefings are where we provide most of that information. But the constant contact throughout the deployment cycle, when we're provided with that information from the service member, really helps us stay connected, and we continue to do outreach, you know, post deployment, and then those, you'd be surprised, sometimes like 2-3 years later you get a phone call out of the blue, hey, I still had your information, you know, I have a question on this, and it's amazing. So you make that connection and it really sticks.
Well, and I think the other thing is we're not 9-to-5 jobs. Nobody here is. If your phone rings at midnight, you're taking that call. They may hear kids yelling in the background, but we don't, you know, our jobs don't end when we clock out at the end of the day. I think everybody on this panel, it's a way of life. And, you know, everyone within our veteran and our military community, you do this job because you have a passion for it. So you try your hardest not to let someone slip through the cracks. You know, you're always involved.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll go back to you and after we come back, and we're also going to talk about Gold Star mothers and the wonderful things you do in the community. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about the issues facing military families, active military personnel, and veterans. And the more we're talking here, Mike, you were saying during the break, the more you guys realize, first of all, you all know each other basically, and there are a lot of organizations available to people. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think in Western Mass we're very lucky. We have organizations that come together on a monthly basis and talk about the resources that are available. So I think if you're a veteran and you're in the community and you talk to an agency, they're going to point you in the right direction of who to go see. you're not going to have to guess on where to go. You don't have to go up to the VA and possibly wait in a line. You can go talk to somebody at a vet center, at a veteran service office, and find out what the resources are in your community if you'd like to.
And it seems like every issue has been touched upon or figured out. People know, okay, oh yeah, we have an organization for this, we have a support group for this. There's no question as to where people should go to get help, right? It seems like everything's taken care of.
Yeah.
As long as they reach out to it.
And even if we don't have the situation, we're going to find one. Like, we're going to find a resource. So.
And something we want to talk about too is Gold Star Mothers. You do incredible work for a very difficult, the hardest topic to talk about. So can you elaborate on the role Gold Star Mothers plays in Massachusetts and across the country?
Our number one goal is for support. We support all the other organizations that are out there. We want to remember our children. We do this for our children, but to support, as I feel, the backbone of our country, which is our military.
And so are you contacted when someone is killed overseas that maybe a mother or father would?
We are not. We are looking into that to let them know that there are other resources out there. That the Gold Star Mothers are here to help and support and to be in that community, to be able to talk to somebody that has gone through it.
And once people are connected, you were saying you obviously know other Gold Star Mothers and you check up on each other, right? It's a support system. Yes,
we do. And as Lisa had mentioned, on social media, you see things that maybe you don't want to see, and there was recently a Gold Star mom that was struggling, and you just reach out. And you let them know that they will get through this.
What has helped you the most through this difficult time?
Volunteering, just giving my time, letting them know I'm here, and we do it for Kenny. We do it for our kids.
Does your family get involved as well as a way to?
My daughter does. My daughter does a little bit, but she doesn't live in the area, so it's a little difficult. My mom supports me, so she supports the whole. So it is a family unit.
And Gold Star Mothers are across the country, right?
Correct.
The organization.
It's a national organization, correct.
What kind of events do you have to help show that you're supporting the other organizations in the military?
Most of what my time is just volunteering and just being on the backside of any event that's coming up. The Ludlow Veterans Day Parade's coming up. The West Springfield Veterans Day Parade is coming up, and there's going to be a party on the Common afterwards, just to thank you for the veterans. There's a dinner for the Purple Heart organization coming up. So to be able to volunteer to help with raffles, to help at the door, to help set up for these events, this is what we do, and support them.
And I'm sure you also find that you get support as well, right?
Oh, well, we get tremendous amount of support, but where I feel the most is giving my time. And I buy a ticket for a veteran or somebody that just needs it, just to let them know, hey, we're here. And it goes a very long way, not just in the veterans community, but in our first responder community also. Just to buy a police officer a dinner, or a firefighter or somebody, just to let them know that they're appreciated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every human enjoys that, to say, hey, somebody cared enough. And that's what we're trying to do, is to let them know that they do mean something. They are important to all of us.
And at the same time, keeping your son's name and mission alive.
Yes, correct.
And it's, like I said, a difficult topic, obviously. How do your organizations help families? You support them through while they serve, but if they are killed, what happens?
We still reach out at them. At Barnes, we've had a few deaths, and we have quite a few, a few Gold Star families, and they're a huge part of our Barnes family. You never stop being a part of the family once you join. And we're just there. On the difficult days, we reach out, we make a phone call, and if you see someone struggling, you take that extra 5 minutes. I think that's the biggest part, is knowing that they're not alone. Just because their loved one's not here with us, their memory never leaves us.
We have people reach out to us, family members, and they just don't know where to go, and we get them that support that they need, or who to contact, or one of the other people here on the panel, or a chaplain, or whoever they need at that time.
From the, the Air Force and I believe the Army as well. The Air Force has Air Force Families Forever, which is an official Air Force program. So anybody who is killed in action will receive an Air Force Family Forever coordinator, and they have certain milestones where they will continually reach out with them. That's a newer program that the Air Force has, and I believe the Army does the Soldier for Life program as well. And so it's just to keep them involved in the community, and they will usually, because a soldier or an airman was stationed at a base in X state doesn't mean that's where their family is. So they try to connect them to the base that's closest to where they reside, so they have a local connection.
With the Army Guard side, I know that we have a Survivor Outreach Services program, which is probably comparable to the one Shanna is talking about. But they reach out to the families during, during different milestones, during holiday seasons, or different, time frames where the families may be struggling. And sometimes during the course, they may develop a relationship with you, and they contact you or reach out to you when they're having a hard time. Social media is a huge part of what we still do for our jobs. We have our professional pages where we're friends with majority of our families and service members. So sometimes they'll reach out to us that way instead of making a phone call, because it's easier for them to say what they want to say or ask. Or it takes 2 seconds for them to ask a question, and 3 in the morning instead of calling or something. But it's it's a unique situation to be in for families.
And we can end with you.
And for us, working with homeless veterans, most of the veterans we've worked with have really lost a lot of family connections. But what we have done is we built columbariums at all of our permanent housing locations with eternal flames. And a lot of the veterans now are cremated and put in those columbariums so their friends can visit them and they can stay connected with the community that they were once a part of.
Interesting. And do you find that some of the veterans that you work with have friends that were killed, or others that they knew in the military that they have to, cope with that?
Absolutely. There are definitely a lot of veterans that we see that have been overseas and have had friends killed that are dealing with that every day.
And you all have events that you hold throughout the year to make sure people know that you're out there and you're helping. We talked about some of those, but we also have links on our website that we'll put up for people to go to those as well, especially with Veterans Day coming up. But that's the end of our program now, so we'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You've been watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about the issues facing military families, active military personnel, and veterans. So that's our program for today, and we want to thank all of our guests for joining us. And thanks to you at home for watching. Remember, if you missed any of it, you can watch it in full anytime on our website at wwlp.com, and you can also find links to our guest organizations on there. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday.